Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Vasudevendra Yogindram Natva Jnanapradam Gurum Mumukshunam Hitarthaya Tattva Bodho Abhidhiyate. I'm sharing the correct screen, right?
Yeah, we can see the text.
Okay, very good. All right. It's been a little while. What, 4 weeks? Almost. We had a long break. The worst thing about having these breaks is that once you have a break, you forget what we were talking about. And especially in a topic like Vedanta, it's very easy to lose track of what it is that we were talking about. But we shouldn't have any more breaks moving forward. I would say that in most cases, I will be available on Saturdays. So should be more consistent from here on for a while. All right. We have gone through some questions already. We've talked about what is Vedanta. We have some discussion of what is Gita, how does it fit into the grand scheme of things. We've talked about Advaita Vedanta. And I think the longest time that we have spent talking about something is the topic of moksha. And I guess that's probably the longest discussion that we've had. As I've said before, if you understand the topic of moksha, it will probably be 80 to 90% of what you're trying to really understand. Because this question of what exactly is meant by the word moksha is really the right question. And we spend a lot of time talking about or figuring out in our life what exactly did we mean by moksha. So we've looked at all of these definitions. We've talked about them before. Then we started talking about the Purusharthas, and again, we ran into the same word, moksha in particular. And then we finally defined it as freedom from a sense of inadequacy has been our definition of the understanding of the word moksha. We'll talk about it some more. It'll keep coming back. It's an important topic to the whole subject matter. It's actually connected intimately to the topic of Vedanta. If you don't remember what we talked about, there are YouTube recordings that you can go back and listen to and get caught up. Generally, sometimes I have to do that to figure out what I said last time. So that's a good place to catch up. So the first verse after the prayer is Sadhana Chatushtaya Sampanna Adhikarinam Moksha Sadhana Bhutam Tattva Viveka Prakaram Vakshyamaha. And we have spent some time talking about this particular verse also. Tattva Viveka Prakaram Vakshyamaha. So we've talked about what is the subject matter is laid out very clearly in this one verse. It says, it is meant for those who are sampanna. We've talked about this before. Sampanna is generally used for somebody who is rich and has a lot of resources. And in this case, it is also being used in that context, but they are rich with sadhana chatushtaya. Preparations of they're very well prepared is what is being. They have chatushtaya. There are four aspects of sadhana that they are very sampann. They're blessed with in abundance, or you could say that is the currency that they have, or the preparation that they have, or the resources that they are blessed with sadhana chatushtaya, fourfold sadhana. What is sadhana? It's an interesting question, right? What is sadhana?
Means.
It's actually connected in Sanskrit to the meaning of the word sadhya. So without sadhya, there is no sadhana. It is a verb of the noun, right? So what is sadhya? Sadhya is whatever is your goal. To achieve the goal, you do the sadhana. If your goal is to play a specific sport, your sadhana is going to be preparation for the sadhya. Because sadhana in and of itself, it is not independent of the goal. Sadhana is actually defined by the sadhana. So it becomes very interesting when he says sadhana chatushtaya sampanna adhikarinam. What was the sadhya? And the sadhya for this adhikari is also moksha, or the sadhya for this adhikari is also this same knowledge or Vedanta. So from that perspective, sadhana has always got the context of the sadhya. And there are fourfold preparations, sadhana chatushtaya sampanna. He's going to reveal them in the next verse. Adhikarinam is somebody who's well prepared. So that whole verse, actually, this is very nice context to look at the word adhikari. Adhikari sometimes gets translated in vernacular languages as someone who has a right to something. They have an adhikar for something. They have a right to something. But that is not the context in which adhikari is used in Vedanta. In Vedanta, an adhikari is somebody who has adequate preparation for whatever is about to be revealed. They have met the prerequisites, would be an adhikari. Someone who has completed the prerequisites for whatever is coming next has the adhikaritvam, or the preparation is the correct meaning of the word. They have the adequate preparation. Is the one who is referred to as an adhikari. So sadhana chatushtaya sampanna adhikari. It's a whole phrase that defines what is the nature of the adhikari. The adhikari is somebody who is well blessed or sampanna, prosperous, with sadhana that has been conducted over multiple times. And moksha sadhana bhutam, their lakshya, their sadhya in this case is moksha. And the instrument of that, moksha sadhana bhutam, it is going to be the direct instrument for them achieving their goal. So loaded this verse is. It's telling you that's the prerequisite. Sadhana chatushtaya sampanna, somebody who has the adhikaritvam associated with the sadhana chatushtaya sampanna. For them to move to the goal, which was their actual sadhya, which is moksha sadhana bhutam, tattva viveka prakaram pakshamaha. I'm going to tell you tattva viveka prakaram. So it talks about the prerequisite, it talks about what is their actual goal, and it tells you how they are going to get to the goal. They're saying, I'm going to get you to that goal right now with the help of this by Tattva Viveka Prakaram. So now the question becomes, what does the word Prakaram mean? And so we talked about this before. A Prakarana Granth is something that is a authoritative text on a particular topic. Here it is saying that I'm going to give Tattva Viveka Prakaram. I'm going to unfold Tattva Viveka, discriminative ability to understand what is real and what is not. So for the sadhana bhutam of moksha, for the goal, achieving the goal of moksha, first you need the preparation, and then next you need the discussion, description, and an understanding of what is Tattva Viveka. What is Tattva Viveka then becomes the question. Now, what is Tattva? In this case, Tattva Viveka becomes the ability to discriminate between what is real and what is unreal. Then I want to understand the meaning of the word Tattva. What does the word Tattva mean? It seems to hold the key. What is Tattva? It comes from the word Tat. Tat means that. Aham is this. Tat is that. Idam is this. Aham is I. Idam is this. And Tat is that. And the Tva that has been added at the end of Tattva is the essence of that. So the essence of that. What is covered by the word that? Everything. Because everything is that. The space in front of you is that. The time that is passing is that. I can point to it as an object. That. As I'm pointing it out, I'm also including the finger in that because it is being used to indicate the sound that you are hearing is included in that. The meaning of the words that I'm saying is also that. The picture in front of your eyes is also that. And what is the Tva of that? What is the underlying, undeniable essence of that? Is Tattva. Tattva Viveka. Viveka is to be able to discriminate between what is that and what is not that. So in that Tat, it's going to discriminate between Tat and Tva. What is the essence of that and what is not the essence of that? He says Tattva Viveka Prakaram Vakshyamaha, and he says Vakshyamaha, which means I will explain at length. I'm not just going to mention it. He says I'm going to explain it in detail. So this verse becomes so loaded because it's like a sutra. In very little words, he has conveyed the context of this subject matter. He says, Sadhana Chatushtaya Sampanna Adhikarinam Moksha Sadhana Bhuta Tattva Viveka Prakaram Vakshyamaha. Clearly, it's a man of few words because he needs very few words to provide the context of what it is that they are going to talk about. I'm very excited to hear what these few words are going to be. Of course, as a student, you're coming across this the first time. I understand what the text is talking about, but there is something that was left unknown in this verse. And you said something about sadhana chatushtayam. There are four. What are those four sadhanas that you've talked about? So first, he's going to talk about the four sadhanas, and then he'll come back to Moksha Sadhana Bhutam, Tattva Viveka Prakaram. So first he's going to talk about what is that Sadhana Chatushtaya. So what happens is that the student who's sitting in the room immediately asks the question, Sadhana Chatushtaya Kim? Kim? What is this Sadhana Chatushtaya? And this one verse reveals the method by which Tattva Bodha is going to continue. It occurs as a series of questions and answers, where as soon as the teacher provides an answer, the student follows this up with a question that was left unanswered in the verse before. So for example, in the previous verse, there was a description of there are sadhana chatushtaya. There are four types of sadhana. So the student, as curious as we all are, asks, Sadhana chatushtayam kim? What are these four sadhanas? And so the teacher answers, and he says, Nitya anitya vastu vivekaha, iham utrartha fal bhoga viragaha, sham adi shatak sampattihi, and mumukshutvam cha iti. These are the four sadhana chatushtayam. The first one is Nitya anitya vastu vivekaha. The word vivekaha has appeared again. In the verse, in the second one, it is iham, which is here, utrartha. Beyond this, falabhog and the word viraga has appeared. Number 3 says Sham Adi Shatak Sampattihi. It includes the word 6 in it. And so item number 3 includes 6 sub-bullets A through F. So Sham Adi Shatak Sampattihi Mumukshutvam Cha Iti. So he answers, what is your natural question immediately after getting this list? The first question that will come into your mind is, Nitya Anitya Vastu Viveka Kah? What is this Nitya Vastu Viveka? So this is literally how the whole Tattva Bodha is going to go. I'm going to give an answer, and then they're going to say, well, what is that? And then he'll answer, and then, so what is that? And so it's a very interactive text that lends itself to discussion between the students and the teachers. So I'm going to take a pause here, and I'm going to open the floor up for some questions and discussion for a moment.
Okay. So I think one question I had was in the word Tattva, doesn't Tva mean you in the word Tattva?
No. In this case, Tva is coming as a suffix, and it's adding to the word Tat, and what it is doing is it's calling about the nature, the Tattva, the essence of something.
Okay.
You would have Tvama in it.
Okay.
And I guess you must be confusing it with the famous Vedantic verse Tat Tvam Asi.
Yeah.
Because it sounds Tattvam Asi. But that is Tat Tvam Asi. You are that, is the translation of that sentence. We will not get into that sentence because it is a Mahavakya. It will take us all of Tattva Bodha to get to the meaning of Tattvam Asi. So we won't disturb that sentence right now.
Sure, yeah.
Any other questions? Okay. So the first one here is Nitya Nitya Vastu Vivekaha. So as soon as that happens, the first question out of the student's mouth is Nitya Anitya Vastu Vivekaha Kaha. What is this? Kaha, what is this? What is what? He says, what is this Nitya Anitya Vastu Vivekaha? What is this understanding of what is Nitya and Anitya Vastu Viveka? It's really funny. If you understand Nitya Anitya Vastu Viveka, Vedanta is done. It pretty much includes the answer of, it's an all of the above answer because it includes everything that Vedanta is going to talk about. So the question becomes, how can it be a sadhana? Right? If it is all of knowledge rolled into one, if I knew Nitya Anitya Vastu Viveka, if I already had the ability to discriminate between that which is Nitya and that which is Anitya, then the question would become, how is that a sadhana? And the answer to that, of course, is it is a sadhana because you keep trying to figure it out. You keep trying to parse out between what is Nitya and what is Anitya. The practice of that discrimination is referred to as sadhana. The understanding of that discrimination is referred to as jnana. And they both go hand in hand because the sadhana has to continue for the sadhya to be reached. So, but the student has already asked the question, what is this Nitya Anitya Vastu Vivekaha? So the teacher answers, and the answer is complete. The teacher says, Nitya Vastu Ekam. Nitya Vastu Ekam. When you have Vastu and A, after that, together they become the new consonant Va. So it's because of Sandhi that you're seeing Nitya Vastavekam. It's, if you break up the Sandhi, it's Nitya Vastu Ekam. Ekam Brahma. Tad Vyatiriktam. Tad Vyatiriktam sarvam anityam. Ayam eva nitya anitya vastu viveka. Talk about giving answers in brief and coming straight to the point. The teacher says, Nitya Vastu Ekam. There is only one Nitya Vastu. It is Brahma. Tad Vyatiriktam. Everything other than that. Tad Vyatiriktam Sarvam. Everything else besides it, he says, is Anityam. And he says, Ayam ev, this alone, Eva is only, Ayam is this only, or this by itself, is Nitya Nitya Vastu Viveka. I got the answer, but I don't get it. But I asked the question, what is Nitya Nitya Vastu Viveka? He says, Nitya Vastu is only one. Ekam Brahma, Tad Vyatiriktam Sarvam Anityam, which brings me to the question, how am I supposed to do sadhana of this? So what brings us to the question, what does the word Nitya mean? Nitya.
Does it mean something that's real or something that is true? Something.
Nitya is a reference to time.
Time, okay.
In Sanskrit, Nitya and Anitya refer to something that is, Nitya is something that is not bound by time. And Anitya is something that is bound by time. So he says, so it's very important. Jo Nitya hai, whatever is Nitya, it never goes out of time. It never stops being. And whatever is Anitya will have a point of creation on the axis of time, a point of sustenance on the axis of time, and it'll have a point of destruction on the axis of time. So tell me something that is, so how would we do sadhana of Nitya Anitya Vastu Viveka? That's a very good question. Well, I guess I couldn't do the sadhana of Nitya Vastu, but I can definitely do the sadhana of what is Anitya. Tell me what is Anitya. What is not surviving time? Oh, that's an interesting question. Isn't everything Anitya? Have you come across something that is Nitya? Plastic? Nitya Vastu, it doesn't blink out of existence. It just continues to be there, except if I set it on fire, then it disappears, becomes gases and runs away. Other than that, plastic is, if you've buried a plastic box, it's a Nitya Vastu, it'll be there. 100 years from now, you come back, it'll be there. 500 years from now, you come back, it'll be there. 1,000 years from now, I'm not sure. 100,000 years from now, I am not sure. 1,000,000 years from now, I am not sure. But I can also look at time 100 years ago, it was not there. Right? If I look at that same spot 100 years ago, it was not there. So is it truly Nitya when it comes to time? So I guess the question becomes, what is the meaning of Nitya? Does it mean that on the axis of time, it is something that goes on for a very, 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 very long time? Would that qualify as something being Nitya?
I think Nitya means something that has a starting point and an ending point.
Anitya, you mean, is something that is the opposite of that. The Anitya is something that has this is definitely Anitya. It has a starting point, it has an end point, it has a whole cycle where it comes into existence and stays around and hangs around and so on. So this becomes definitely Anitya. It is something that is not independent of time.
I got confused in the words.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. You're not used to it, so that's all right. The language is a little bit different. Yeah. So Anitya is something that is definitely time bound. So let me ask my original question. Have you ever come across something that is nitya?
The ocean, water in the ocean.
The water in the ocean.
It was there 100 years ago. It is there 100 years after now. It'll be there.
Sure enough, but it was not there before the planets were formed.
Yeah.
Transcends time in some way, but okay.
Yeah. What is the perspective of time then becomes the question. Because the earth itself has a start point and an end point. So does the solar system. So does the universe. So does the galaxy. So does everything else. So the question becomes, have you ever come across anything that is nitya? And how should I define it? Is it something that goes on for a very, 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 very long period in time? Or
okay.
Perhaps the axis of time does not apply to it. What does that even mean? The attribute of time does not apply to it. What does that even mean? Well, let's talk about it. What does the attribute of time refer to?
When it was there, or when it started, or something like that. When and how, or something. I think that's what you're trying to get to.
It's more like, as you said, like a starting point, ending point, then period it existed of change.
What is time? What is the perception of time except the perception of change? For something to be independent of time, it has to be something that has no attribute of time. And what is time but the perception of change? So something that is independent of time is going to be independent of change. Absolutely. Well, what is change?
We can take 4 seasons, for example, right? Day and night also.
Change is an attribute. Correct? What is change? So the grass was this big and now it's this big. There is an attribute that I'm saying it changed. The grass was green, now it turned yellow. It's an attribute. When I say time has passed, I'm saying that something is undergoing change. And when something is undergoing change, one of its attributes has changed. So time is change, and change is an attribute.
So would that mean that anything that does not have attributes is nitya?
Correct. What has no attributes whatsoever? This teacher has said, there is one vastu that does not have any attributes. And he refers to it as Brahma. He says it is a nitya vastu. It is the one that does not undergo change. Who could it possibly be? In order for change to be there, you need an unchanging observer. Now, the observer has attributes too, but that's not the observer that is being talked about here. The observer that is being talked about here is the observer not only of the change, but it is also, the observer is also, in this case, existent. What does that even mean? What does that even mean, existent? If time is change, and change is a change of an attribute, then before I even observe it, it has to exist, right? I had a short grass and I had a long grass, and the short grass grew into the long grass, but the short grass existed and the long grass exists. And the seed of the grass, when it was there, existed at the beginning. And as the grass grew up and turned green, achieved its maximum length, it existed. And as it turned yellow and decayed and underwent wilting, the wilted grass existed. And then it completely decayed and went into the soil, and nobody can find it again. But that destroyed grass continues to exist. The thing that didn't change in the entire life cycle of the grass was existence. When the grass came, it existed. When the grass lived, it existed. And when it died, the grass's death existed. It seems that in order to perceive change, existence is needed first. And that existence does not change. In fact, time exists. Does it not? Time exists. Existence precedes time. Because for time to exist, existence comes first. That existence is what is referred to as Sat. And that existence is not a jada vastu, an inanimate object. It is a conscious object, which is also referred to as Chitta. And that existent conscious object has no attributes because it is independent of time, independent of space, independent of intelligence. It has no attributes whatsoever. For something that has no attributes, there is no limitation of size or time, thus making it Anantam. That Satchidananda Atma is what is being referred to here as Brahma. So he says, Nityavastu ekam Brahma, tad vyatiriktam sarvamanityam. So for every object that I perceive, it comes enveloped in existence. And while it is changing, but it remains enveloped in the same existence. And as it blinks out of existence, existence continues. There cannot be a perception of time without the pre-existence of existence itself.
So is time itself anitya?
Has to be. Has to be. Because time also has a starting point. We have now come to a model where we understand that creation occurs. Creation occurs at time zero. Destruction occurs at whatever time it occurs. And this cycle of creation and destruction is cyclic. It goes on.
So if time is an attribute, then how can we use it to describe something that has no attributes?
We do not. The limitation of time applies to objects that are in time. This is the one that is independent of time. The perceiver, the observer of time, is independent of it. The attribute of time does not apply to it. If the attribute of time does not apply to it, now watch this carefully. Is it here now?
Time?
Brahma.
Brahma.
If the attribute of time does not apply to it, it exists through all of time.
Right. Okay.
Which means, is it here now?
Yes.
Absolutely. Where is it? Where is it? I want to see it.
I'm
But
looking at
right now, in this instant, you are having an experience. You are seeing sounds, visions, words, noise, meanings, thoughts, feelings, perceptions. They are all there in your antakarana. And you are experiencing it all. And they are all enveloped in existence. There is no question in your mind whether this experience is happening or not. This experience is happening. Who is the perceiver of this experience? How do you know that this experience exists? The answer is I know. I don't need a pramana to tell me that I'm having an experience. It's right in front of me. Even little, I don't need a pramana to know that this experience exists. Existence itself is self-revealing. It is the zeroth principle. It's always present through all of the experiences, through all of time, and yet independent of time. So it is here right now, enveloping your entire experience. The vritti that is occurring in your antakarna is entirely enveloped by the same. And the ability to discriminate between nitya vastu and anitya vastu is nitya nitya vastu viveka. The ability to be able to see the infinite through the finite is nitya nitya vastu viveka. Of course, if we understood all of it in one shot, we would have reached the goal. But this continues to remain the sadhana, is to see that all objects have attributes. And all attributes undergo change. But the one thing that doesn't change is its existence, the fact that it is. It may be green, it may be yellow, it may be young, it may be old, it may be undergoing all kinds of modifications, but what never changes is that it is. Even when it is not, the isness continues. This Nitya Vastu has been introduced in verse 3 of the Tattva Bodha as Brahma, which begs the question, what does the meaning Brahma? What is the meaning of the word Brahma? And why has it been brought into the discussion point? Here I will tell you an interesting story of the meaning of the word Brahma. Brahma is a noun that has been made from an adjective. It's a funny adjective. It means big. The adjective that it is referring to is big. So what ends up happening? What do you think of the adjective big? Well, big means big, right? It's an adjective. It defines that something is big. Is a big mouse the same as a big mountain? The answer is not at all. So the adjective is supposed to qualify the noun, right? But in this case, the noun is qualifying the adjective. Because in order to understand big mouse, I need to understand mouse. And it's only relative to the mouse that there is a big mouse. And it's only relative to a mountain that there is a big mountain. So although the adjective applies to the noun also applies to the adjective. They both qualify each other. It is not that big by itself is an adjective that can be understood. So in order to create the meaning of the word Brahma, they took that adjective and made a noun out of it. So it's a bigness. So bigness is what is probably a reasonable translation of the meaning of the word Brahma, which brings us into the discussion of space. Because I use the word big. Right? So nitya vastu ekam Brahma. It is the one that is beyond borders. The one that has no limitation of space, no limitation of time. Because in order to imagine big, the moment I ask you to imagine a big mountain, right? What was the first thing that you imagined?
Everest.
The space in which the big mountain is standing. Or the big mouse. The first thing that came into existence was the space in which that big mountain is standing. So as soon as I start talking about size, the first thing I have in my mind is space, which is not bound by length, width, or height. In order to imagine something with length, width, and height, I had to conceive of something that was not bound by the three. Because that has to come in first for us to actually have something of an object that has a size located within it. And even before you imagined the space, what was there? The existence in which that space was enveloped. Even before you could imagine space, the whole idea existed. Space is attributeless in terms of length, width, and height. But this Brahma is attributeless with respect to space and with respect to time. Because the moment you imagine an object with any attribute, the first thing that comes into, the first thing that is always present is its isness, the existence itself. We cannot have a conversation in the absence of isness, existence itself. And this existence has been described by Brahma, one that is free of all dimensions, one that is free of all change, one that is free of all modifications whatsoever. So, well, the sadhana chatushtayam, the first one is nitya anitya vastu vivekaha. Enveloped in it is all of Vedanta, all of a sudden. And the sadhana is to get there little by little, to understand what it means of, what is the meaning of the object with attributes and how those attributes are anitya. They're constantly changing. So the teacher says, nitya vastu ekam brahma, tyadivatirikta sarva anityam. Now this topic of Brahma, of course, it can be multiple chapters. It's the whole subject matter of the discussion is Brahma. We will keep coming back to it multiple times. But it was a good enough introduction to the topic of what is meant by this Satchidananda Atma, by this Brahma. By the way, Sat, all of the meanings of the word Satchidananda Atma that I talked about, they're all coming. The student is going to ask Sat Kim, Chit Kim, Ananda Kim. We're going to ask all of them. So we will get a chance to talk about all of them in excruciating detail. But I couldn't move forward from here without providing a little bit of perspective on what is meant by the word Nitya. Nitya is not meaning something that exists for a long duration in time. Nitya is something that is independent of time. In fact, time is borrowing its existence from this Sadvastu, because time exists, space exists, and they both undergo change, and that change continues to exist, and it is perceived by the observer. There is something phenomenal that is sitting at the fundamental basis of both of them. But the thing is, it's also very real, because if there is a vastu that is nitya, that is Brahma, which means that it is pervading all of space and pervading all of time, then I got to ask the question, is it here now? The answer is has to be. And the second question is, where is it? And the answer is, where is it not? Everything that you are observing is enveloped in the same existence. Where is it not? Of course, I can't seem to be able to discriminate between it and the objects that are enveloped in it, because my mind is used to looking at objects. In fact, my mind itself is an object. And that's okay. This Brahma will never become an object of my mind. It cannot. The mind itself is an object. It pervades it through and through. It will never become an object because it has no attributes. The only thing that can appear in my mind is something that has attributes. That is the nature of the mind. Which means, am I never going to know it? Well, I asked you, where is it not? It is always here. It is not an object of the mind. Then who is it? The answer is that it is you. The essence of you, the essence of the observer, is that unchanging Brahma, that Satchidananda. That will take a little bit of time to discover what exactly is meant by, what part of me is meant by that Satchidananda. And there'll be multiple verses that will repeat that. So that was the first sadhana. I think I'll stop here because the next sadhana will take me a lot of time to cover, which is viragaha. And it says, Iha swarga bhogeshu ichharahityam. That's the definition of the next sadhana. And it's closely tied into our discussion of moksha, but I'm going to pause here so that we can have a couple of questions and then we can wrap up. In context, sadhana chatushtaya kim? And there were four. The first one was nitya nitya vastu viveka, which we spent most of our time on today. Next time we will talk about iham utrartha phal bhoga viragha. And it will tie in, it will dovetail in very well with our discussion of moksha. In a way, nitya nitya vastu viveka was a slight deviation from what we were talking about. When we were talking about moksha, we were talking more about iham utrartha phal bhoga viraga. The topic of nitya nitya vastu viveka suddenly was a very intense topic. But when the teacher says there are four sadhanas, the first one had to be nitya nitya vastu viveka, because it's telling you to look at the attributes of objects and how they are changing and how you are perceiving that change and what that change is enveloped within, because that will be the subject matter of the Vedanta. All right. I'll stop here for some questions and answers.
Professor, one question I have is that in the verse that we saw, it says that Brahma is Nityam and everything else is Anityam. But then we also spoke about how Brahma is everywhere, like where is it not? So if that's the case, then there is nothing other than Brahman, right? So then
Yes.
that means everything is Nitya and there is nothing Anitya, right?
Yes.
So then why does, like, how does it translate to like everything else is Anityam? What does that else mean over there?
That's a great question. And it will be a question that will stay with us till the very end. It's a question that we will address at the very end. So in the beginning, we are doing viveka, separation, the ability to discriminate between that which is real and that which is unreal, that which is nitya and that which is anitya. We will be discriminating between that. And as we do the discriminative process and we understand that which is real, It will stand up and swallow everything that is unreal. And then everything that is unreal, in a way, is enveloped in the same consciousness, in the same awareness. And so you would say that everything else is also nityam, but not the kind of nityam that you were thinking about. It is not that their attributes will become infinite. Its existence will always be the same. I'll give you an example that will help you probably understand what we're talking about here. Imagine that you are having a dream. And in this dream, we are having this conversation, you and me. And in this dream, you are standing and I'm standing, and all of space and all of time is there, and we're having this conversation. Not an uncommon dream. We have all kinds of dreams with all kinds of objects and subjects and whatnot. So you were able to discriminate between you and me and space and time in your dream world. Tell me, who is in this dream world?
Me.
It is only you. Somehow, you were able to discriminate between two, and at the same time, there were never two. There was only one person ever in that dream world. But there seemed to be more than one. Multiple people, space, time, laws of physics, laws of creation, they were all present in your dream world. Everything was there, and yet there was no one but you. How did that happen? Well, that is fantastic. Because you just asked me the question, how can there be nitya and anitya? You tell me. There were so many objects, and yet there were none. It's got something to do with how the human being creates. We'll talk about that. That's another subject matter that will come up a little bit later. But this topic will, so initially, when you and I are having this discussion in the dream, I'll say, you are you and I am I. And then I'll tell you that the dreamer is everywhere. And so you will say, true, if the dreamer is everywhere, then you are part of the dreamer and I am part of the dreamer, which means that we are both the dreamer. Absolutely. But then I am no longer there. Neither are you. The anitya vastu disappeared. Where did it go? Well, it was never here. It was only notionally here. It was an incorrect conclusion that the anitya vastu existed. The nitya vastu woke up and swallowed it all. Did it wake up and swallow it all? No, it was never there. It was always an illusion. It was always not an illusion. It was always a matter of perception and a lack of understanding. And so the study of Vedanta is the pursuit of understanding the reality of all objects through discriminative analysis of their attributes. And that's what's going to go on. And the object that Vedanta, this Tattva Bodha text and most Vedantic texts will pick will be you. They will pick you, the person reading the text. Your body, your mind, your intelligence, well, pick the object that is closest to you, which is you, in order to do the discriminative analysis. All right?
Yeah.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. All right.
Professor, I had one more question, but maybe we can.
Yeah, we can stop the recording and then we can. Oh, is it related to the topic or
It's
something?
related to the topic.
Oh, okay. All right. Let's keep going.
So maybe, but we can discuss next class since we're almost out of time. The intellect came up. Now, first point is actually, if you see, it is about discrimination, which is the whole faculty that is being discussed about in the first point is intellect. And I was also thinking it from another perspective of jnana versus bhakti. If you see in the order, this looks like you need to gain jnana, you need to focus on point one, and to have bhakti, I mean bhakti, the method of bhakti is more on the second point, vairagya. That is, all your desires and emotions are put into a direction where you are able to give them up, kind of thing. So the question exactly what I had is intellect the only thing that is needed for jnana? So in the sense, like what we were saying is, you're kind of I mean, I've heard many of people say that you want your intellect to be sharp, so that it says this is this and this is not this, right? But I'm kind of facing the problem where when it has become sharp enough, it is not able to kind of swallow. At one point of time, you said once you realize that this is this and that is that, it should swallow everything up. But what if you put, I mean, I'm kind of noticing when you're putting too much emphasis on your intellect, saying this is it, this is not it, you kind of lose out in kind of swallowing everything up. So my question was related to this. So maybe we can I'm sure this is a very kind of
I'll give you something to chew on over the week.
Yeah.
You talked about jnanam and you talked about bhakti. There are many layers to your answer, to the question. So I'll answer one of the layers, maybe not all of them, but you talked about a very important topic, jnana and bhakti. I will borrow some words from language to help us understand. It would be okay for me to use the word love for bhakti. Is it okay? I mean, I'm going to refer to it as love. Bhakti is love. I'm going to use that for a second. It's devotion, agreed. It is devotion, but it's not a devotion that is, it's a devotion that is imbued in love. It's completely, thoroughly, it's devotion that is born out of love. It is devotion that is completely covered by love. When you were born as a child, you loved your mother, programmed to do that. But there's more to that than just the programming. We love this person who takes care of us. And as we grow older, we begin to understand what this person has done for us. And the more we understand what this person has done and sacrificed for us, the more the love increases. The more I become understanding.
Professor, just 1 second. I have someone at the door again.
Okay.
I just come back. Sorry.
I'll pause for a second. Yeah. Yeah. So I was setting up the context for love. I was saying that when you talk about love, one of the most important persons that a human being loves is their mother or parent. And as the child grows, the child gets to observe, see, and better understand this parent. They see the sacrifices, they see the contributions, they see how much has been done. And as you grow up, I'm sure you've asked your parents or your mother how she was like in college or how she was in school. And you've had an imagination where, you know, if we had been in school together, we would have been great friends or perhaps had a great time together. Every child, I have 2 children and I've had this conversation, and I remember being a child and I remember going through this in my head as well. What I'm trying to say is that knowledge increases bhakti, and bhakti increases the curiosity to know. They are not two different things. They are two sides of the same coin. As your bhakti increases, your knowledge will increase. And as your knowledge increases, your bhakti will increase, because this entity that we are talking about, this Bhagavan that we are talking about, is such a fantastical entity that knowing about them will only increase your bhakti. And increasing your bhakti will give you more jigyasa to know. So they go hand in hand. First of all, these are not two separate paths. They are the same. Just as the more you know, the more you love, the more you love, the more you want to know. And it's a cycle that continues. So they are not two separate things. Secondly, the idea that somehow the knowledge is becoming dry and that it is not percolating into my heart. It is almost like a capsule that is stuck here and I'm not feeling it percolate into my hridaya. That is happening perhaps because the knowledge needs to be applied to everything around, which means that truly, as you look at just as simple as the space that is in front of you, or as simple as the time that is in front of you, as you see it enveloped in that infinite all the time, you will realize that it is always here. And while one can say that I can discriminate between entities with attributes and the one that is always present, I must say, you don't need a lot of intellect to understand Vedanta. It's not that complicated. It's not that difficult. It's actually something in a way that is quite simple. We are the complicated people who have to undo a lot of notions in order to get there. But fundamentally, it is I don't want us to think or have the perception that this is a complicated thing that requires extensive study to understand, because it is ever present. It is ever present in such a way that even if you lose your mind altogether because of an unfortunate incident or disease, you will continue to remain that Satchidananda Atma. This knowledge may disappear from your mind because you lost your mental faculties, but that doesn't reduce you to a person who is no longer Atma. Atma will always continue. So I'll leave you with that thought to ruminate over. I think I addressed it, and then we can come back to it if it is still left. Okay?
Yeah, it's clear, Professor. Thank you.
All right.
And sorry
you.
for missing half of the class. I had JRG over come from Indianapolis, so I was just talking to him.
No worries. You can watch the recording. That's the good thing about the recording.
Yeah.
All right. Bye for now.